Hello everyone, welcome to Unacademy, India's largest online learning platform. Let's crack UPSC CSC English. Now before I start the session, let me introduce myself for the people who are new on the platform. My name is Alok Oja. I have done my engineering from Pune. I have been associated with the field of UPSC since past 7 years. I have been through various stages of civil services exam. I also hold the experience of giving CDS SSB twice. I also hold the experience of exams like Uttar Pradesh PSC and CAPF exam. I am involved into the field of teaching since past 5 years and I have mentored more than 15,000 students for UPSC. Now, today we are going to start with a very dynamic topic, that is Bhakti movement. Prior to this, we have seen about Islam and Sufism. Now we are going to focus upon Bhakti movement. Now, there might be question in the mind of an aspirant why one should prefer Unacademy as a platform for online learning. So here are the ample of reasons why one should prefer Unacademy as a platform for online learning. First of all, you'll have daily life classes on the Unacademy platform. Unacademy offers you assimilation of top and dynamic educators of India on a single platform. You can directly interact with the educators. You can clear all sorts of doubts with the educators. Second most important aspect is Unacademy helps to build up your competence by going through live tests and quizzes. I'll give you a very small example. Every year, approximately around 1 million aspirants aspire for civil services, and 3 to 4 lakh aspirants sit in the prelims exam, out of which 10 to 11,000 qualify the prelims exam, 3 to 4,000 qualify the mains exam, and finally 800 to 1,000 odd make into the final list. So if I filter it down, one aspirant is competing with 800 to 900 other aspirants. And in that case, he needs to build up that sort of competence or competitiveness. And basically, Unacademy helps to build up your competence or competitiveness by going through live tests and quizzes so that one can easily analyze his preparation. All the courses on Unacademy platform are highly structured in nature and there is a proper timetable through which the courses are being conducted. One can have unlimited access to the courses on Unacademy platform. Here are the few top and dynamic educators of India from whom you are going to learn through. Subscribe to Unacademy and use my code AKOUS. I repeat the code AKOUS. Now there is also something called as iconic subscription. Now what is majorly iconic subscription all about? Like in the initial days, the preparation goes completely in haphazard manner. Like there is no proper strategy in what direction the preparation needs to go. And basically an aspirant is highly confused about what option needs to be chosen up, how various GS subject needs to be clubbed. Secondly, how much time should be dedicated to a particular GS subject, how much time should be dedicated to newspaper reading, what is the importance of answer writing. So there would be a proper mentor who would be guiding you throughout your journey for civil services preparation. So if you choose me as your mentor, please use my code AKOUS. I repeat the code AKOUS. Unacademy also offers basically dedicated subjects on the optional, basically wide range of optional subjects are being covered on the Unacademy platform, which includes the subjects like public administration, sociology, then philosophy, then basically political science. All the humanities subjects are being covered. Apart from the humanities subject, there is also a lot of focus on the literature subject, which is quite rare basically. And all the literature subjects like Maithili literature, Hindi literature, English literature, Kannada literature have also been covered under the Unacademy platform. So the fees for 24 months, that is for 2 years for the basically optional subject, is around 40,000, and for 3 years it's approximately around 50,000. And similarly, the fees for 1 year, what we say GS subject is 49,500. For 2 years it's approximately around 72,000, and for 3 years it's approximately around 90,000. These are the certain special classes that I have conducted previously. Subscribe to Unacademy and use my code AKOUS. Now let's get started with a very dynamic topic today, that is Bhakti movement. Now before I start with Bhakti movement, let me go into a bit of background. Okay, I'll go into a bit of ancient India so that you guys can easily understand the background about the evolution of the Bhakti movement. Now, basically it is said that with the passage of time, there was evolution of religion. Now, if I go back to Indus Valley civilization, the religion was majorly symbolic in nature. Like I'll give you a few examples. Like Indus Valley people wore amulets or they wore seals as amulet. Basically, these amulets were being observed around the neck and the wrist of the people. They worshipped various symbols. Now, like there have been evidences like at certain places, like at a place called as Kot Diji, a statue of Mother Goddess was found. Then, seal of Proto Shiva or Pashupati Mahadev was found from the site of Mohenjo-daro. Now, with the age of Vedic civilization, people majorly again focused on symbolic worship. And majority of the gods during the Vedic period, early Vedic period, were nature gods. For example, Surya, that is sun god, Vayu, that is wind god, Varun, that is water god, Aranyayani, that is goddess of forest. So majorly the early Vedic people believed in the practice of animism. That is love and respect for nature. So majority of the gods basically during the early Vedic period were nature gods. But with the passage of time, there was evolution of various other gods. Like there was evolution of Prajapati, which connotes Brahma, Vishnu, and finally Rudra, which connotes Lord Shiva. Again, with the passage of time, there were evolutions of various other religions like Buddhism and Jainism. But with the passage of time, during the Gupta age, there was revival of Hinduism. And specifically in Hinduism, there was revival of Vaishnavism. Now, what is Vaishnavism? Vaishnavism majorly focuses upon worship of Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna or Lord Ram. So this evolution took place during the Gupta age. Gupta age is also referred as golden period of temple architecture in India. In a very systematic format, there was a proper terminologies being associated with the temple architecture that we have seen in quite depth and detail in the Gupta era. Now around 7th 8th century and specifically in the region of southern India, okay, there was evolution of Bhakti movement. To an extent, Bhakti movement was being inspired by Sufi movement. Now what is Sufi movement all about? I'll give you a small background. Sufi movement again basically took birth basically around 7 to 8th century AD. Now, Muhammad bin Qasim was the first Muslim invader of India. He was followed by Mahmud of Ghazni. Later, he was followed by Muhammad Ghori. And with the arrival of Muhammad Ghori, there were many Sufi saints who came into India. The word Sufi has been derived from a word called as Suf, which means wool. And wool symbolizes purity. Now, these Sufi saints majorly focused on one important aspect, that it is not necessary to go for rigorous, what we say, ritualistic practices to come close to the God. One can come close to God just by showing love and respect towards God. Just by showing deep reverence towards God, one can easily come close to the God. Similar concept was being, what we say, symbolized in the Hindu society, and that is reflected in Bhakti movement. And Bhakti movement just it's basically started during 7th 8th century, but the genesis and the origin of the Bhakti movement can be traced way back to the ancient India. Now, basically it is said that the movement actually began in the southern part of India, and there were two types of Bhakti saints. One who worshipped Lord Shiva, and the second who worshipped Lord Vishnu or various incarnations of Lord Vishnu like Lord Krishna, like Lord Ram. Now, they believed one important aspect, that one can follow his worldly duties, but apart from following his worldly duties, these saints majorly focused on one aspect. just showing love and respect towards God. Just chanting the name of Lord, one can easily come close to Lord and easily attain salvation. Okay? Now, Bhakti movement. Basically, it is said that it was not just a movement which was just confined to religion. Bhakti movement also focused on varied aspect of the society. I'll give you a few examples. There are saints like Ravidas. There were saints like Guru Nanak ji. There were saints like Kabir ji. They majorly focused on certain antisocial, what we say, things that were prevalent in the society. And they said that these antisocial elements or these antisocial things should be discarded from the society. For example, they believed in basically casteless society, or they were completely opposed to caste system. Then they were opposed to the rudimentary system that was taking our society backwards. So this simply denotes that the Bhakti movement in the Hindu society was not just confined to a particular religion. It also focused on social cleansing. It's also focused on cleansing of the minds. As I have told you previously, initially after the Vedic age, there was evolution of Buddhism and Jainism. And after Buddhism and Jainism during Gupta age, there was start of the Bhakti movement. Specifically in the Gupta age, there was start of Vaishnavism. Because Gupta rulers were majorly worshippers of Lord Vishnu. But Bhakti movement gained popularity after the Turks invaded India. Specifically, and the Bhakti movement started in the southern part of India. And later on, it spread to the other parts of the country. That is northern part of India. Now, I'll give you a small background. Now, what were the reasons for evolution of Buddhism and Jainism? Okay. Now, basically, it is said that the early language that was previously during the ancient India, the most dominant language was Sanskrit. And Sanskrit could only be understood by the higher echelon of the society or those people who were educated, like the Brahmins and the Kshatriya. But with the passage of time, but with the what we say coming into existence of Buddhism and Jainism, there was more emphasis on local language which could easily be understood by the masses. We have observed that the teachings of Vardhaman Mahavir was majorly in Prakrit language or Ardha language, which was easily understood by the people. Similarly, Buddha preached in a very simple language, that was Pali language, which could be easily understood by the people. So during the Bhakti movement, which evolved during 8th to 12th century AD, there was more emphasis on the local language which could be easily understood by the masses. Because as I've told you, Bhakti movement was not just confined to a religion. It is not just a religious movement. It is also a social cleansing movement. Like it opposed child marriage. Okay, there are various saints like Guru Nanak ji, Kabir ji, then basically Namdev, Eknath, Jnaneshwar ji, Ramdas ji, all these are Bhakti saints from the region of Maharashtra, Mirabai ji. Okay, they also focused apart from the Bhakti movement, apart from the worship, love, respect towards the God. They also focused on various other things like removal of sati, removal of child marriage. Then they spoke against the caste system. What does this simply exemplify? This simply exemplify Bhakti movement was not just a religious movement. Okay, it was also transformation of the society. Now, the basically they said that it is also nothing but a socio-religious reform movements. You can just categorize it as socio-religious reform movements. Like I'll give you a small example. Mirabai. Mirabai, she was worshipper of Lord Krishna, and she composed poems in the worship of Lord Krishna and Radhaji in the region of Rajasthan. Her bhajans and kirtans became so popular in the region of Rajasthan, basically that she attracted lot many followers. And basically she also tried for socio-religious reform movements in that region. Okay, so these are the philosophies and these are the names of the founders of that philosophy. You just need to remember the names for now. We are going to study all these philosophies in quite depth and detail when we are going to study art and culture. But many a times there have been a question in the exam like Visishta Advaita philosophy was given by whom? So it is by Ramanuj or Ramananda Acharya. Then Dvaita Advaita philosophy was given by whom? So it was given by Nimbarak Acharya. Dvait philosophy was given by whom? So it was being propagated by Madhvacharya. And finally, Shuddha Advaita philosophy was given by Vishnucharya. Okay. So basically, as I've told you, we are going to study all these philosophies in quite depth and detail. But for now, you need to remember these philosophies were propagated by which of the saints basically. Okay. Now, hope so the points are clear. Hope so you understood the genesis of the Bhakti movement and you understood what was the role played by the Bhakti saints, not only in the religious movement, not only as a part of religious movement, but also sensitizing the masses through socio-religious reform movements. Hope so, my friends, the points are clear. Okay. Now, the Bhakti saints majorly focused on the local language. And the reason behind that I have told you previously. Why they focused on the local language? For example, people could easily understand the local language. And whatever Bhakti saints are trying to preach, people could easily assimilate that. For example, Mirabai ji focused on Rajasthani and Hindi, which was easily understood by everyone. Tukaram, Eknath, Ramdas ji, Jnaneshwar ji, all these focused on Marathi language. Okay, like I'll give you a very small example. They were majorly the worshippers of Vithoba or Vitthal, which is nothing but worship of Lord Vishnu. So basically, they used Marathi as a medium to sensitize the masses, which could be easily understood by the people. So usually you can see that the saints, the Bhakti saints of the 8th century use the language of the people so that message could be easily clear to the people. Okay, like Chaitanya and Chandidas, they preached in Bengali. As I have told you, Mirabai ji, she preached in Hindi and Rajasthani. Shankar Dev ji, he preached in Assamese. Tulsidas ji, who was pioneer of Ramcharitmanas, a wonderful book on the story of Lord Ram and Sita, that has been written by Tulsidas in Hindi, or specifically we can call it as Avadi. Why? Because it could be easily understood by the people. Hope so the points are clear, my friends. Why there was more emphasis on the local languages. Okay. Now, I have told you about that Hindu society. There were two systems that were being prevalent in the Hindu society. First is worship of Lord Shiva, and the second is worship of Lord Vishnu. Shiva basically means auspicious, and each and everything that is associated with life of Shiva has a significance. I'll give you a very simple example. Okay, you might have seen the Trishul, which is associated with Lord Shiva. Now, what does that Trishul symbolize associated with Lord Shiva? The Trishul means the 3 points of that Trishul. One is knowledge, other is Kriya or Karma, and third is basically ego. Until and unless one conquers his ego, he cannot attain the true knowledge. And what is that true knowledge? The knowledge of self is a true knowledge. So once you surrender to Lord Shiva, you will attain the true knowledge. That is control over the senses. Then you might be seeing Lord Shiva is wearing a tiger skin. This simply symbolizes the conquering of the egos. Then one can see the tripod, or one can see the bhasma on the forehead of Shiva. And there are 3 lines of this bhasma. And what does these 3 lines of the bhasma on the Lord Shiva denote? These 3 lines of the bhasma on the Lord Shiva denotes the various gun of which are prevalent in the human being. Getting the points clear? These guns are like Sattva gun, Rajas gun, and Tamas gun. Okay, like for example, if somebody is helping out anyone, that is Sattva gun, means that he has a philanthropical nature. If somebody is what we say if somebody is in a different situation, and if a person is observing his plight and getting what we say, like he's feeling guilty, he's feeling what we say sad for that person, it means that this person possesses a quality of empathetic nature. He possesses a quality of sympathy. This is sattva gun. Okay, one wakes up early in the morning, that is sattva gun. Rajas gun. Rajas gun something can be categorized as laziness. Okay, can egoism, ego, it is a rajas gun. And tamas gun, all the vices that are prevalent. Okay, basically like greediness. Okay, that is what we say tamas gun. So all these sorts of vices are categorized under tamas gun. So sattva, rajas and tamas are being symbolized by the three lines on the forehead of Lord Shiva. So that, what does that symbolize? This simply symbolizes that we should connote to the sattva gun and follow the sattva gun. You might have seen the Rudraksh mala around the neck of Lord Shiva. So what does this 108 beads Rudraksh mala on the neck of Lord Shiva symbolize? This simply symbolizes one thing, that in fact even Lord Shiva is bound by the nature. He is bound by the law of nature, and so are we. And we need to follow that law. The damru or the drum in the hand of Lord Shiva, what does that symbolize? It symbolizes the cosmic sound. Okay, so followers of Lord Shiva are referred as Shaivism. Okay, or the following of Lord Shiva is referred as Shaivism. Now, Kal. Now, what is Lord Shiva? There are various personification associated with Lord Shiva. One is Kal. Kal simply represents what? Samay or time. The time is transient in nature. Time keeps on changing continuously, basically. And who is controller of all the activities that is occurring in this universe or the world? It's Lord Shiva, Kal. Natraj is a sort of a dance associated with the Lord Shiva. Maximum time you might have seen Lord Shiva sitting on Kailash, Mount Kailash, and continuously he is sitting in a meditative posture, in a yogic posture, sitting in a Padmasan. So that is referred as Mahayogi. And Shankar, a divine form of knowledge, a person or a personification of what we say blissful or absolute knowledge. Getting the points clear? So, the followers of Lord Shiva in the region of South India are referred as Nayanar. I repeat, are referred as Nayanar. Now, where does the origin of Nayanars come from? I'll tell you a very simple story, which is a very interesting story again, which will tell you the origin of Nayanar. Now, Nayanars refer to 62 devotees of Lord Shiva. Okay, from the time of Sundar Murti Nayanar. Now, who was Sundar Murti Nayanar? Sundar Murti Nayanar was basically a saint in the South India who preached about Lord Shiva. Now, a hypothetical or a legendary story say that this person, Sundar, okay, Alala Sundar basically was a servant of Lord Shiva in Mount Kailash. Now, he was very attracted towards two ladies who were the palace guards of goddess Parvati. And Lord Shiva came to know about this. Now, Lord Shiva blessed all the three of them and they said that you would be born on the earth. Now, all of the three were born on the earth. Okay? Now, when Sundar was born on the earth, Sundar Murtiji was born on the earth, there was a marriage ceremony being arranged, basically, of Sundar Murti. And Lord Shiva came to that marriage ceremony dressed as an old man. He did not come as Lord Shiva. He came as an old man and he stopped that marriage ceremony by saying that, your grandfather has given me a written agreement on a palm leaf that you are going to work for me as a servant. Who is saying this to Sundar? This is being said by Lord Shiva, who has taken an attire of an old man. And everybody in the crowd was astonished about this. That when his grandfather wrote him that he will serve him as a, what we say, servant. So he said that I have a written agreement of your grandfather, which is written on a palm leaf. So he said that, Sundar said, please show me that written agreement. He said that this written agreement is located at a particular temple in Tamil Nadu. Getting the points? At a place called as Tiruvallur. Now he said that everyone please accompany me to that temple and I will show you that agreement which was written between your grandfather and me. And basically everyone accompanied him to that place, basically, that old man. As soon as this old man entered into the Garbhagriha, okay, there was an auspicious light. As per the legendary stories, there was an auspicious light, and he was lost in that light, and nobody could see him further. Everybody believed that he was nothing but Lord Shiva. So it is said that in the dream of Sundar, again Lord Shiva came and said that your duty is to preach Shaivism among the people in the southern India and preach through poetry, preach through bhajan, preach through kirtans, and preach through stories and tales. And henceforth, he, Sundar Murthy Nainar, he came to be called as Tampiran Tozan. I repeat, Tampiran Tozan. That is nothing but comrade of Lord Shiva. Okay, so basically he took the what we say responsibility, or it was his basically he was fortunate enough to spread the Shaivism in the region of southern part of India. So the followers of Lord Shiva are referred as Nayanars. Now basically Shaiva sect, we are going to study this again in quite depth and detail when we are going to study art and culture. So in that, Shaivism is basically divided into various branches. Okay, one is Pashupata sect. Pashupata sect flourished basically in Western India and the region of Odisha. Now what is Pashupata sect all about? This sect, like the followers or the saint of this sect, Pashupata sect, they carry a trishul in their hand. Their entire body is full of ashes. Then come Kapalikas and Kalmukhas. Now these can be basically referred as Aghoris. Now why they are called as Kapalikas and Kalmukhas? Because they carry a human skull along with them. Secondly, apart from human skull, they also have the food in the human skull. And they believe that ultimate way to attain salvation is bhakti towards Lord Shiva. The ultimate way to attain moksha is bhakti towards Lord Shiva or Lord Rudra. Okay. And they also believed in worship of Bhairav form of Lord Shiva. You might have heard about Bhairav form of Lord Shiva. So basically, Kapalikas and Kalmukhas also worship Bhairav form of Lord Shiva. Sometimes it is also said that the Kapalikas and Kalmukhas are also accompanied by a dog. They carry a dog along with them. They put ashes on their body. Okay. Then comes Gorakhnathis. The Gorakhnathi sect was started by a Rishi Muni whose name was Gorakhnath. Okay. And his followers are called as Gorakhnathis, basically. Now, they also believed in tantric practices and yoga, basically. Now, Shaivism also gained prominence in the region of Kashmir, and it was popularized by Vasugupta and his disciples. Okay. Now, Aghor Shaivacharya, they are called as Agamatas and Sudhasaivas, then Veerasaivas, Lingayat cult. So all these are sect associated with Shaivism. Hope so the points are clear, my friends, about the Shaivism. Did you understand the various aspects of Lord Shiva and Shaivism? Okay. Now, as I have told you about Lord Shiva, similarly, let us study about Lord Vishnu. The followers of Lord Shiva in southern part of India are referred as Nayanars. Similarly, the followers of Lord Vishnu in the southern part of India are referred as Alvar. I repeat, they are referred as Alvar. And the origin of worship of Lord Vishnu can be traced back to early Vedic period and specifically during the what we say Gupta age. Like you might, if you see or if you observe the coins of the Gupta period depict the symbol of Garud. Garud is a symbol of Lord Vishnu. So initially it began with worship of Lord Krishna, that is Vasudev Krishna. Again, with the passage of time, it took the worship of Lord Vishnu and Lord Ram, which can be simply summarized as Vaishnavism. Now, there were many poems, there were many abhangas, there were many bhajan and kirtan being associated with Lord Vishnu. Okay, and they came to be called as Prabandh. Okay, now Alvars, as I've told you previously, like basically there were 12 Alvar saint who were fortunate enough to spread the Vaishnavism in southern part of India, and later on it also spread to the northern part of India. Now these saints traveled extensively on foot and sensitized the people about the worship of Lord Vishnu or Lord what we say Krishna or Lord Ram. So basically, they moved through various parts of the country. Initially, it began in southern India. As I have told you previously, initially it began in southern India and later on it spread to the rest of the country and specifically the northern part of India. Okay, so the bhajan, kirtan, and the abhangas that were associated with them, okay, are referred as basically were referred as Divya Prabandham. Hope so you understood about Vaishnavism and Alvar saints. Okay. Bhagavatas. Bhagavatas basically focus on Bhagavad Puran and Vishnu Puran. Okay. Now Puran deals with various topics. We have seen this in the ancient part. It deals with various topics like Sarg and Pratisarg, which simply means creation of the universe, its destruction and recreation of the universe. Like it is said that basically the universe was being created by Lord Brahma. The universe is sustained by Lord Vishnu. And there was destruction and recreation of the universe. The destruction is being done by Lord Rudra. So basically Bhagavad Puran and Vishnu Puran specifies about the sustaining of the universe. So Bhagavatas, a branch of Vaishnavism, majorly focuses on Puran, that is Bhagavad Puran and Vishnu Puran. Totally there are 18 Mahapuran and 46 Upapuran, and majority of the Puran deals with Lord Vishnu. Then comes Pancharatras. Panch means five, Ratras means night. Now there is one sect which is called as Pancharatras. Like there was a sage Narayan, he conducted a what we say yagya. He conducted a sacrificial ritual dedicated to Lord Vishnu continuously for 5 days and 5 nights. So that is why this sect is called as Pancharatras. And this sect was later on systemized by Sandilya in 100 AD. Then comes Vaikanas. Okay, Vaikanas is again a sect which is dedicated to Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna. Now, basically, they are the followers of Krishna Yajurved. I'll give you a very small example. There are four Ved: Rigved, Samved, Yajurved, and Atharvaved. If you break the etymology Rigved basically means praising the deity. And how one is going to praise a deity? One is going to praise the deity through hymns, through mantras. Second is Samved. The origin of Indian music can be traced to Samved. A musical instrument, okay, called as Veena has been mentioned in Samved. Like Aitareya and Kaushtaki Brahman are associated with Rigved. Panchvish, Sadvish, Jaminya, Tandamaha, and Talwakar. All these are Brahmins associated with Samved. And next come Yajurved. In Yajurved, there is focus on sacrificial rituals. There is performance of various yagnas. Like I'll give you a very small example, like Ashwamedh Yagna, Vajpaya Yagna. All these yagnas are being performed in the Yajurved. And now Yajurved has been categorized into two parts, Krishna Yajurved and Shukla Yajurved. So the proponents of Krishna Yajurved are referred as Vaikanasas. Okay? And four ancient sages propagated basically Krishna Yajurved. So they are Atri, Mariki, Brign, and Kashyap. Hope so, my friends. The point is clear about Vaishnavism. Did you understand Shaivism and Vaishnavism? Just simply you need to remember that Shaivism is nothing but worship of Lord Shiva. Vaishnavism is nothing but worship of Lord Vishnu or Ram or Lord Krishna. Specifically, you need to remember about worship of Lord Vishnu. And Lord Ram, Krishna, all these are incarnations of Lord Vishnu. Okay? Alwars are worshippers of Lord Vishnu or followers of Vaishnavism in South India. Nainars are followers of Shaivism in southern part of India. Hope so the points are clear till here. Okay? Now, in very simple words, in very simple language, we need to understand what is Nirgun saint and what is Sagun saint. Nirgun means God is formless. There is no form of God. And Sagun, God has been personified like human beings. I'll give you a very small example. Like we have seen like Lord Shiva. We have seen the pics of Lord Shiva. He has been given personification like human beings. We have seen the pic of Lord Vishnu. He has been personified as a human being. Goddess Lakshmi personified as a human being. This is nothing but Sagun saint. And what is Nirgun saint? They believe that God is formless. They believe in pantheistic nature of God. That is, Lord is present everywhere. They believe in omnipresence of Lord. Okay. For example, it is said that there is a Hindi saying, Kan Kan mein Bhagwan. God is present in each and every particular particle. Okay, so they believed in one simple aspect that God is formless. Okay, secondly, Sagun Saint majorly focused on religious aspect of the Bhakti movement. They did not focus on societal reforms, but Nirgun Saint focused on societal reforms along with the Bhakti movement. Okay, as I have told you, Kabir, they were completely opposed to idol worship. He was opposed to caste system. So he particularly followed the God. He particularly, what we say, preached equality among different sections of the society. So Kabir basically was majorly focusing his activities on socio-religious reform movements. So Nirgun Saint basically they were liberal in the social matters, and Sagun Saint were not liberal in the social matters. The example of Nirgun Saint are Kabir, Guru Nanak ji, Ravidas ji, Dadu Dayal ji, and so on. And Sagun Saint were Ramananda, Surdas, Tulsidas, and Chaitanya. Hope so the points are clear, my friends. Yes, please let me know. Okay. Now, within 1 minute, we are going to understand saints, various saints like. Okay. Before I start Kabir, I'll tell you a small story about Ravidas ji. Okay. He was also a Bhakti saint, and you can observe that the teachings of Ravidas ji is also being reflected in the teachings of Kabir ji. Okay. Ravidas ji once basically he was a cobbler. So Ravidas ji he was sitting, and one basically a person was passing by, and he was going to take a dip in the holy Ganges. Okay, so there was a cut in his slipper, and he came to the cobbler Ravidas ji and asked him basically, please repair the slipper. So Ravidas ji started repairing the slipper. Now they both started having a conversation, and Ravidas ji inquired, where are you heading up to? So he replied that I am going to take a dip in the holy Ganges. And just in a sarcastic manner, the person said that, how come you will know about the taking dip, and how come you will know about the Shastras and so on? So Ravidas ji gave a very simple reply. He said, "Yes, how can I know about this?" So he gave the slipper, and this one when this person was going once he was heading towards the holy Ganges, Ravidas ji gave him a simple coin and told him that please offer this to Mother Ganges. He said, "Okay." Now this person went there. He what we say prayed to Mother Goddess. Then basically he took a dip in the holy Ganges. He performed the puja, and he was returning back. And when he was returning back, he felt that yes, he what we say realized that the cobbler had given me a coin which I had to offer to Mother Ganges. So he offered that coin to Mother Ganges, and immediately one hand came out of the river. It's a hypothetical story. Okay, a hand came out of the river and offered one bangle, one what we say diamond bangle, and said, "Please give this to cobbler." The person took this, and on the way he was going back, and he thought that why should I give this to the cobbler, and how come he will come to know that this has been given back as a written gift to you from Mother Ganges. So he took this and gave it to the king. Okay, he took this and gave it to the king, and king was very astonished to see such a jewel, basically diamond. Okay, so he offered this what we say bangle to the queen. Queen was very much fascinated towards that diamond. She was very much attracted towards that diamond, what we say bangle. But again, after like basically after a moment, she was like basically, "I want the entire pair of the bangle." Now the king said to this person, "Get me another bangle as well. If you get me another pair of the bangle, basically, I'll give you 20,000 gold coins. But if you do not get this back, okay, I'll behead you." Now this person started weeping in front of the king and told him the entire story. What had happened? King said, "I'm not concerned about your story. I want another piece of bangle means I want another piece of bangle. I'm not concerned about what happened with you." So this person went back to the cobbler Ravidas ji and told him. Ravidas ji took a simple bowl, okay, and in that bowl he filled a water and just prayed to Mother Ganges. Again, another bangle came out. Okay, it's a hypothetical story I'm telling you again, but what is the deep message given in that story? Until and unless one is pious in his thoughts, until and unless his prayers are pious, until and unless he thinks for the society, one cannot come close to the God. Okay, similar message is reflected in the teachings of Kabir. Kabir basically said that he was born to a Hindu parent, but he was brought up by a Muslim family. Okay, like he called God by various names. He called God as Hari, Govind, Ram, Allah, Rahim, Khuda, and so on. And he completely like there are followers of Kabir who are Hindus. There are followers of Kabir who are Muslims. Getting the points clear? And Sikh also follow Kabir. Like basically the songs of Sikh, the songs of what we say Sikhism, like or the songs of Kabir are also being inculcated in Adi Granth, okay, which is a religious text of the Sikh basically. Getting the points clear? Now, what does Kabir says? Kabir says that one should live a simple life. He completely focused on casteless society. As I have told you, he had the followers or he had a following from the Muslim sect. He had a following from Sikh sect. He had a following from Hindu sect. So what does he says that the only way to come close to God is to respect humanity and mankind. Because within every human being resides the Lord. And if we cannot respect the fellow human being, we are disrespecting the Lord. So he majorly focused upon that. One should lead a simple life. That is called as bhakti towards the Lord. Okay, like one of his poem is quite famous. Like Bijak is a compilation of the dohas which were composed by Kabir. The dohas of Kabir are very famous. I'll give you a very simple aspect. He believed that in every particle there is a God. There is presence of God everywhere. For example, a person who is a potter, what is God for him? The soil is God for him because he is giving the shape to that soil. which is gaining the shape of a pot. So Lord is present everywhere as per Kabir. Okay, and he used a local language basically so that people could easily understand his teachings. And he also attempted to overthrow the narrow mindedness of the society. Okay, the compilation of the poems, the compilation of the dohas which were being compiled by Kabir is known as Bijak, and one of the famous dohas is Sakhi. Okay, my friends, hope so you understood about one of the saint, Bhakti saint Kabir. Yes, guys. Okay, now let us understand about Dadu Dayal. Okay, now the follow Dadu Dayal, like he was born in Ahmedabad to a Muslim family, but he was brought up by a Hindu family. Okay, and similar to Kabir, his basically teachings were very simple in nature. He only believed in one important practice, that just show love and respect towards God, you will easily come close to the God. Serve to the humanity, you will come close to the God. You will attain salvation or moksha, which is the ultimate aim of the life. Because service to humanity, service to mankind is service to God. Okay, and the followers of Dadu Dayal basically are called as Dadu Pantis, and the teachings of Dadu Dayal are collected in a book, or the compilations of the teachings of Dadu Dayal are called as Bani. I repeat, are called as Bani. Hope so the points are clear, my friends. Now let's focus upon Guru Nanak Ji. Now Guru Nanak Ji was born at Talwandi, which is in present day Pakistan. Now Guru Nanak Ji, he preached a casteless society. Then he was completely opposed to ritualistic practices that was taking our society backwards. Okay, he was completely opposed to decadent old traditions and customs which were holding our society backwards. He was quite a liberal saint, and he said that in the Kali Yuga, he basically said that continuously reciting the name of the Lord is one of the keys to come close to the Lord and attain moksha or salvation. He emphasized on one God. That is, he simply preached monotheism and not polytheism. Like, beyond every religion reigns one important religion, that is humanity. So, in very, very simple language, in very simple words, all the major saints focused upon humanity. They focused upon philanthropy. They focused upon mankind. Now, Guru Nanak Ji, he said basically that one's conduct basically is decided by his character. And how is character built up? Through pious nature, through pious thinking. Okay, so basically that is reflected in the character, that is reflected in the conduct of that person. So the first condition to come close to the God is developing a pious character, which is reflected in a pious conduct. Pious means pure. Okay, and he said that to show the proper path of the religion, to show the proper path of livelihood, every person requires a guru, and a teacher or a guru plays a very significant role in the life of a person. I had given you a similar example in Sufism. Sufism believed in one practice called as Peer and Murid. Peer means teacher and Murid is disciple. It is a responsibility and the duty of a teacher or a master to show a proper path to the disciple. Okay, so he basically focused upon what we say the role or a guidance of a teacher, which plays a very major role in the life of a disciple. He completely denounced idol worship. Okay, and he said that one can also come close to God by performing his household duties. Like, it is not necessary to completely renounce your worldly life to come nearer to the Lord. You can also live your worldly life. One can also perform his household duties. And apart from that, basically, it is said that one can also focus towards humanity. One can also focus towards philanthropic activities. One can also focus on Nam Japana. Naam Japna basically means chanting the name of the Lord. Because in Kali Yuga it is said that chanting the name of the Lord is one of the most important key to attain salvation. Okay, so this is factual in nature. These are the important 10 gurus of the Sikh. We are going to study Sikhism in quite depth and detail. Each and every religion, that is Sikhism, Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism, Christianity, everything we are going to study in art and culture in quite depth and detail. So it is factual in nature. Just have a look at it. Okay. Now, there is also a military organization, or the initially basically it is said that Guru Arjun Dev, one of the gurus of the Sikh, basically he compiled the what we say Holy Guru Granth Sahib. Okay, then basically it is said that a militia clan was being organized basically by Guru Gobind Singh Ji, which is called as Khalsa, and every Sikh has been distinguished by 5 Ks, or they are being basically characterized by 5 Ks: Kesh, Kada, Kacha, Kanga, and Kirpan. That is dagger. Kesh means hair. Okay. Kada basically the bangle. Okay. Kacha, that is a brief. Then the Kanga, that is a comb, and Kirpan, that is dagger. Okay, so every Sikh is being categorized by, or they are being characterized by this 5 Ks. Okay, now as we have seen, these are all Nirguna saint. Now we are going to focus majorly on Saguna saint, and I have told you time and again about the difference between Saguna and Nirguna saint. Nirguna basically means that God is formless. They believed in omnipresence of the Lord. Lord is present everywhere. And what does Sagun believe? God has forms and attributes like human beings. Okay, so Kabir, Guru Nanak, Namdev, all these were the basically Nirgun saint. And now there have been various avatars of Lord Vishnu, like Lord Ram, Lord Krishna. Okay, and basically they were being propagated by the Saguna saint. So let's quickly have within a minute a look at the various Sagun saint. Now, Ramanand. Now, he was the first great Bhakti saint from the northern part of India. He worshipped Lord Ram, which is again an avatar of Lord Vishnu, which is again one of the incarnations of Lord Vishnu. As I have told you one important aspect, that every saint, either it be a Bhakti saint or either it be a Nirgun saint or a Sagun saint, they believed in one important practice. If one needs to come close to God, he need to show love and respect towards the God. Similarly, Ramananda believed in two major principles. If one needs to come close to God, one should show perfect and flawless love towards the Lord. Okay? And second is human brotherhood. He also focused on fraternity. That is, he was completely opposed to the caste system. So this is about Ramanand. And his major disciples included Kabir, who was a Muslim weaver, Raidas, who was a cobbler, Sena, who was a barber, Dhanna, a jat peasant, Sadhana, a butcher, Narhari, a goldsmith, Pipa, a Rajput prince. So these are the major disciples of Ramanand. And one of the major disciples that we have studied previously, just a while back, Kabir. Okay. Now, the group of his followers are referred as Bairagi. Okay, and he is referred as a bridge between the Bhakti movement of North India and South India, because he can truly be said as the first Bhakti saint of the Northern India. Okay, so the followers are referred as Bairagi. There can be a probable question in the exam. The followers of which among the following saint, or the followers of which among the following saints are referred as Bairagi? Dadu Dayal, Kabir, Ramanand, or Guru Nanak Ji. So it is basically what we say, Ramanand. Hope so the points are clear, my friends. Now, Chaitanya, he was worshipper of Lord Krishna. Okay, his actual name is Vishwambar Mishra, and basically he was born in Bengal, and finally he settled and died at a place called as Puri in Odisha. His poems, his bhajan, his kirtan, his tales, all these are associated with or are basically surrounded around the life of Lord Krishna and Radha. Okay, he is also referred as Gaudiya Mahaprabhu or Chaitanya. Getting the points clear? He is also referred as Gaudiya Mahaprabhu. So you need to remember about this, that his major teachings were around the worship of Lord Krishna and Radha. Again, Mirabai. Okay, she was the only child of Raja Ratan Singh Rathod of Merta. Okay, this question was also asked in Kaun Banega Crorepati. Okay, so she was the only what we say child of Raja Ratan Singh of Merta, and she was a staunch worshipper of Lord Krishna. Okay, like basically she belonged to Krishna cult of Vaishnavism, and she, what we say, wrote verses about the love of Krishna and Radha, and that is called as Padavali. Okay, she composed various devotional songs dedicated to Lord Krishna. Tulsidas, as we have told you, as I have told you particularly previously, that Tulsidas ji was worshipper of Lord, or he was devotee of Ram. Okay, one of the avatars or incarnations of Lord Vishnu, and he composed Ramcharitmanas in Awadhi language. Okay, which is a local language in the eastern part of UP. Okay, now basically the entire Ramcharitmanas has been divided into 7 parts, which basically tells about the life of Lord Ram and Goddess Sita. Okay, like one of the important part which is quite famous, that is Sundar Kand. There are other parts as well, that is Lanka Kand, Kishkinda Kand, and so on. So Tulsidas ji majorly focused on Ramcharitmanas, and he composed Ramcharitmanas, and the other compilations of Tulsidas ji has been mentioned here, like Sanki Mangal, Parvati Mangal, Geetavali, then Kavitavali, Vinay Patrika, and so on. Next comes Surdas. Okay, Surdas. Okay, why he was referred as Surdas? Because he could not see. Okay, now he was disciple of Vallabhacharya, and he was also a worshipper of Lord Radha and Krishna. Okay, and basically his bhajans, his kirtan, his devotional songs were in Brij Bhasha, which is prevalent in the region of Western UP, specifically in the region of Mathura and Vrindavan, and is one of the most important books and compilation is Sahitya Ratna and Sur Sagar. Suravali is also associated with Surdas. There is a very wonderful story associated with Surdas. Like everybody was going to the temple, okay, and in fact Surdas ji was also going to the temple to take the darshan of Lord Krishna. Okay, now basically somebody asked him, everybody is going to the temple to take the darshan of Lord Krishna. You cannot see, but still you are going to the temple. Okay, he said, he gave a very wonderful reply. And what was that reply? I cannot see, but Lord can see me. And Lord can see this, that every his follower is coming to take his darshan. And one of the followers is person Surdas. So I cannot see him, but at least he can see me. Okay, and once his his blessings fall upon me, my purpose of my life is completely fulfilled. So such a wonderful reply was being given by Surdas ji. Okay, now Shankar Dev, he popularized the Vaishnav cult or Vaishnav Bhakti in the region of Assam. Nabhadas, okay, he wrote Bhaktamal, okay, and Narsi, he is also referred as Narsingh Mehta. He popularized Vaishnav cult in Gujarat. Okay, now this is about the 4 mathas or the 4 directions, basically the 4 math which were being established by Shankaracharya ji in the 4 directions of the country. So you need to remember this Peeth, Siddha Peeth, they are referred as Siddha Peeth or Math, and these are the regions where this Siddha Peeth are located. Okay, it is factual in nature. We are going to study, again I am telling you time and again, we are going to study this in quite depth and detail in art and culture. But there can be a probable question in the exam, the Math and the region. Okay, so one of them Peeth or Math is Jyoti Math, which is in Badrinath, which is located in Uttarakhand. Then Govardhan Math, which is located in Odisha. Then Shri Sharda Peetham, which is located in Dwarka, Jamnagar in Gujarat. Then Dakshinamaya Shri Sharda Peetham. It is located in Sringeri, Karnataka. So please remember these important mathas which are in the four directions and were being established by Sage Shankaracharya ji. Okay. Hope so the points are clear till here. Please let me know, guys. Vidyapati. Okay. Vidyapati was basically worshipper of Lord Radha and Krishna. He had composed various devotional songs and poems which are dedicated to the love of Radha and Krishna. So these are the poems or the compilations or the compositions which were written by Vidyapati. Okay. He is also referred as Maithil Kavi Kokil. I repeat, Maithil Kavi Kokil. There can be a probable question in the exam. Which among the following Bhakti saint is also referred as Maithili Kavi Kokil? So it is Vidyapati. Okay. Eknath. Now, majority of the saints in the region of Maharashtra, they belong to Vithoba cult. Now, what is Vithoba cult? Vithoba cult is worship of Vitthal. That is Lord Vishnu. So Eknath was one among them who is associated with Varkari sect. What is Varkari? Varkari is worship of Lord Vitthal. That is Vishnu. Okay, and he wrote various commentaries, like he wrote a commentary on Ramayana which is called as Bhavarth Ramayana. Okay, and he also wrote basically a book on Bhagavad Puran which is called as Eknathi Bhagavat. Why it is referred as Eknathi Bhagavat? Because it was written by Eknath. Ramdas ji was also guru of Shivaji. Okay, and he was born in Jalna district near Aurangabad. Okay, he is also associated with worship of Lord Ram and Krishna, and he compiled his work which is known as Das Bodh. There has been a question in the exam. Das Bodh is compilation of which of the Bhakti saint? So it is a compilation of Ram Das. Okay, Jnaneshwar ji. Okay, he is also worshipper of Vaishnavism and specifically worshipper of Lord Krishna. He has wrote a commentary on Bhagavad Gita which is also referred as Jnaneshwari, and it is a milestone in Marathi literature. He has given a wonderful description of entire Bhagavad Gita in Jnaneshwari. Okay, and Purandar Das was a Bhakti saint from Karnataka, and he is also known as father of Carnatic music. Indian music is divided into two parts: North Indian style of music and Carnatic music. Carnatic music evolved in the southern part of India, and the pioneer of Carnatic music was Purandar Das ji. Okay. Yes, my friends, these are certain important facts or the points that needs to be remembered from the exam perspective. Please have a look at these. Yes, guys. Hope so you understood the previous lecture which I have taken on Sufism. Hope so you understood the entire Bhakti movement. Time and again I am saying this point again, my friends. The certain philosophies like Vishishta Advait, Dvait, Advait, all these philosophies we are going to study in quite depth and detail in art and culture section. Okay, guys. So hope so majorly you understood the Bhakti movement. Okay. So basically, please keep on practicing answer writing because answer writing plays a very crucial role. Time and again, right from the start of Medieval India session, I've told you guys one important thing, that please keep on revising Medieval India, because UPSC usually has a tendency to ask terminologies from Medieval India. So once it is necessary to go through all these terminologies, because what happens usually we forget this terminology. But if continuously we go through these terminologies, we can easily remember those terminologies. Okay, so please keep on revising the concept. If you like my lectures, please use my code AKOUS. I repeat the code AKOUS. Okay, and you can also follow me on my Telegram channel, that is Unacademy_Alok Ojha. So please do take good care of yourself, and a very happy Diwali to all of you. Thank you and have a very nice day.